So, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about data protection and choosing the right one. I'm Emad Younis. You can find me on Twitter at Emad_Younis. And my lovely co-host is...
Phoummala Schmitt. You can find me on Twitter, Exchange Goddess.
Okay, so choosing the right type of data protection. So, how do you want to start?
Well, let's think about this now. Data protection. There's so many different options.
So, some people are under the assumption that backups aren't really important.
Well, what happens if your environment just collapses or somebody goes in the data center and unplugs?
But I'm replicating, right? I'm replicating
Well, that's
from
not
one.
that's not. I guess backups. That'd be a
Right.
business continuance.
Right, but some people don't look at it like that. They look at it as, hey, I'm replicating from one site to the other, right? So that should be my backup, correct?
Well, it sort of is backup, but it's more business continuance than anything, though. Because backup, you're backing up data and you're storing it in a different location potentially.
But here's the kicker. If I'm replicating from point A to point B and there's some corruption, all I'm replicating is corruption from point A to point B, right?
True.
So
Yep.
at some point, I need to make sure that that copy that's being replicated, there is some sort of backup to revert to.
Yep, you're totally correct.
So,
So I guess when you're choosing a type of data protection, you really have to think of your environment, your business needs. What's your ultimate overall goal? Are you thinking about what happens if a tornado came and our data center, got blown away, or a fire, or in your case, database corruption? So basically, when you are looking at protection, you have to put those factors in, and it's almost like tiering your disaster or your event. So software backups are great for that corruption, for instance.
exactly.
Also, your application high availability. Those are great too because depending on the application, you can configure delayed replication like Exchange DAGs. You could have a DAG member in a different data center that's replicating maybe 15 days behind.
Are you just plugging yourself now by using Exchange?
Yeah,
Was
of
that
course.
like a plug?
Exchange.
Well, you also have, Active Directory. You
Yep.
have SQL,
Correct.
Oracle.
Yeah.
So
Oracle.
I just kind of put that in there. But yeah, so those are kind of examples of applications that have built-in types of high availability within their application, right? So you really don't need to worry about, having some sort of replication for those apps. But other apps, like you were saying, you need that tiering, right? So
Print servers, any web server.
I would say web application servers, things like that, you should look at. And, snapshots, I've dealt with customers that assume since they have some sort of VMware snapshot that, hey, my VM is backed up, which,
But that's not a backup.
Exactly.
It's a snapshot.
Right, it's a point in time.
It does work in some cases, though. For instance, your print server. Do you really want to back up your print server every day using a software? Because honestly, it's a print server. Or let's say you have your test dev server. Now, if your environment goes down, that server is dead, you may be suffering a little bit, but
Right.
that's where I think hardware-based protection works really well because you can set, replication up or a snapshot and figure, okay, I've got my print server, maybe once a month, I'll snap it, replicate it across, and you're fat, dumb, and happy.
These are VMs that don't change often, right? So you don't really have to worry too much about, their backups. But, there's, as far as replication goes, so now we have, we got vSphere, does, replication. You have, Zerto, you have, some product that we're here for,
It's green.
Yeah, it's green. I guess
It starts with a V.
Yeah, there you go. So
Yeah.
Veeam. So which one would you prefer to use and why?
I think it just really depends on the application and your environment. you basically have to look at it and go, okay, what do I really want to do? If it's a SQL server, you could do a combination of high availability plus even snapshots replication, but you got to be careful with those sensitive apps though, because if you do a snapshot and you replicate it and you restore it, you have a world of hurt.
Right.
But for a web app that doesn't change too often, you could do the software backup, you can do the snapshots and the replication across to a different data center.
What about location? What if I'm not doing from data center to data center? What if I'm doing like a branch office?
That's with that's actually really interesting, because now depending on your branch office, what about your your bandwidth?
Yep.
Because you really don't want to use all of that that pipe, but if it's small,
right?
You're pretty much SOL. You're going to choke the pipe. Users are going to complain that they can't go to the internet and look at cat pictures. So you got to be cautious of that. And
well,
that's where I want replicate.
Right. Well, but you can always seed it initially, right?
True.
And then just replicate the deltas, right? So that's.
But depending on your pipe, though, but if you have a really small pipe, and even just a small delta change can. What if you're in South Africa and you've got a 56K?
Well, then I'm sorry for you. Shouldn't be in South Africa with a 56K pipe,
But you never know. There are some companies that they have a site there.
Well, for those, they're probably doing like some sort of VDI, or where there's not really much change going on, and
I wouldn't necessarily say that they're doing VDI. I know a company that doesn't.
I'm just giving some sort of example, but you know what I mean. I mean, it's just something that's persistent where they don't really have to replicate a lot of data, or they're maybe backing it up to a local file server there and maybe sending the tapes off or something like that.
That's actually. Branch offices are interesting because you can do snapshots replication, but in some cases you may be better off using the cloud.
You could do that too.
I mean, there are different options there, and I know we don't have it listed in our slide, but the cloud is also an option.
But that also depends on your internet, right? So
Correct.
Now we're back to speed. So touche.
It's always the network. Blame it on the network and DNS
and firewall.
Yes. Who needs firewalls?
Yeah. So, okay. So now we've covered, replication. We've covered snapshots. We've covered the app, right? Software backups. Any preference in
software backups? I think they are good, but if you have application high availability, like Exchange, I'm gonna plug that in just. Again,
you get like $1 every time you say Exchange. Is that how that works, or do you get a new pair of shoes? I bet you get shoes, don't you?
Of course.
Okay, well there you go.
I'm going to the Prada store after this. Just don't tell my husband.
This is Vegas, right? So
yeah, software backups. Yeah, if you have high application high availability like Exchange, I actually wouldn't back up Exchange.
So, but only certain pieces of it, right? I mean,
it really depends. Microsoft says you technically don't have to if you have delayed replication set. Now, in a former life, I actually did not back up Exchange, and all I did was a DAG across 2 data centers, and what I did instead of a backup is I did snapshots, hardware-based snapshots, using a particular vendor that starts with an N, and we used their Snap Manager for Exchange product that was Exchange-aware, so it would truncate the logs for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had snapshots basically around the clock every 2 or 3 hours, depending on the database, depending on the data center. So that, I mean, it works great. Didn't have to, back up anything. And
just use the client if you wanted to restore.
Yes.
Yeah, because I did some things.
Well, if you build your Exchange environment up correctly, you don't need to really restore, because there are options within Exchange that allow you to have like your deleted items. If somebody deletes something, you could have cache. There's all different things you do, and SQL does the same thing as well.
Yes.
And then with SQL, you could have maintenance scripts that run and manually back up.
That's exactly what I did for an environment I built for a previous company. We used that, and we used a software backup product that starts with an N that we used their plug-in, and basically backed up SQL that way. So
A lot of people do,
Yeah.
and it works great. And then if you use software backups, you can use the agent a lot. Veeam has a SQL agent that you can use. The other backup vendors do as well. So, but software backups I think are really good for applications that don't have an agent-based backup aware component, and you can use those in combination with your hardware base. For instance, there's different hardware vendors here, storage vendors that do replication as well. But but depending on your pipe, you may not want to do both. It's
Well,
it may be a little bit too redundant.
I think so if we take a step back, any application that has built-in type replication, of course, we don't have to worry about.
Yeah, like domain controllers.
Right.
You really need to back up your domain controller.
But let's
all the
say we
time.
have an app server, right? I think we back it up, at certain periods of time, and then set another period of time to have, the replication kick in, right? So you don't have that contention between your backup and your replication with your SAN, right? Because the last thing you want is having that, and then on top of that, you have antivirus kicking in, and now you have some fun at, at 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock at night, right? So,
where do you do your backups from? Do you do it from your primary site or your other site?
well, that's a whole different discussion, right?
Yeah.
And we have like a minute left, so.
Can I get 5 more minutes? No. So basically the overall conversation here that we've had is it really just depends on your business needs, the requirements, and your overall environment.
Yeah.
And that really determines what's the best method.
Yeah, I think you look at the software that you're going to use for backups or replication, see if they meet your business needs, your requirements, see if they meet your licensing needs, right?
Yep.
Your budgetary needs, right? All those fit,
Your SLAs.
Your SLAs, yeah.
And put it all together, and and you can use different combinations. It's not bad to use all of them.
No, and
I've used all of them before.
Well, depending on your zones too, right?
Yep.
You can have a DMZ that uses this, and then you can have another zone in your production zone could use this, right? Because depending again on your needs. So we also forgot to mention, that VMware has data protection as well. So that's another one that you can throw in there. So there you go.
I guess for another day.
Another day, yeah. If we had more time, we would talk about that, and I'm sure you would love to talk about more shoes.
Well, that's why we gotta go, because I gotta go buy another pair of shoes.
Well, you can go look at shoes. Sorry, no interest in that. I'm a guy, so.
But if I don't have my high shoes, you can't see me.
Well, how about if I just kind of scrunch down? Does that work? All right.
Peace out.